Hello and welcome to the reformerpilates.com podcast, where today I'm joined by Seran Glanfield. Seran is the founder and lead strategist at Spring 3, a business and marketing consultancy built specifically for boutique fitness studios. For over a decade, she's helped Pilates, bar and yoga studio owners attract more clients, improve retention, and build sustainable businesses that fuel both profit and fulfillment, all without the overwhelm. But Seran isn't just a strategist, she's also a Pilates teacher, certified business consultant, and the voice behind the Pilates Business podcast, where she shares real-world insights from helping hundreds of studios grow and thrive. In today's episode, we're diving into a topic that's on every studio owner's mind, the big trends and patterns shaping reformer Pilates and boutique fitness in the US, and which of those are starting to ripple toward the UK. Whether you're thinking about expanding your reach, refining your marketing, or simply staying ahead of the curve, this conversation will give you clarity, perspective, and actionable insights for what's coming next. So let's get into it. And Seran, welcome to the reformerpilates.com podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited with this conversation.
Thank you very much. Well, if that sounds good, let's get into the first question. So, Reformer and Pilates studios have exploded in the US over the past few years. Is growth still looking strong, or do you think it could be starting to reach a saturation point?
Oh, it's such a great question. It's a question I think that we're all asking ourselves over here as well, for sure. We've seen obviously tremendous growth in the Pilates industry all around the world. Everywhere we're seeing growth, year over year, positive increases and trends upwards when it comes to uptake amongst new consumers, but just the quantity of consumers who are now looking for and taking regular Pilates classes is higher than it's ever been, right? So this is the dream. This is what Joseph Pilates wanted for the world when he set out to establish his method all those years ago. We saw Pilates studio booking volumes, increase by almost 100% in 2023. So the industry side, the booking numbers almost doubled that year. And since then, we've seen numbers still not far off that. So huge growth across the board. And, we see a lot of investment in the industry coming in still. And we're still seeing growth. There's still studios opening very, very strongly. But we are also seeing that there is a lot of concern about just how much more capacity there is in the industry. I'm not seeing any issues yet from the data, and I look at everybody's data that I work with, all the studio owners that I work with, and most of them are in the Pilates world. I'm not seeing any issues yet, but I work only with people, or I should work with people who are implementing the best strategies there is, because they are working in my program, right? So they're doing all of the things. They have built the infrastructure for their marketing, for their, their operational growth and so on. And so they probably are sort of the best of the best in terms of what we're seeing from a data perspective, and they're not having a problem. But I would imagine that I'm seeing the people who are sort of inquiring about coming into my program are seeing perhaps having a bit of a concern about how, they used to be the only Pilates studio in town, and now they're in a street or a row of 6 or 7, right? And it's concerning, it's worrying. So I think that there is still, as always, there is still a possibility of growth out there for those who are growing it as a business and thinking strategically and thinking about what's next and ensuring that they are ahead of the game. And so, I think that we're seeing an ongoing increase in interest when it comes to wellness and well-being and movement practices. And, Pilates, someone who's been doing Pilates for 20 years. I see people who do Pilates for a very long time. That's what a lot of the clientele is. If you start doing Pilates when you're young, you're going to continue on with it because you enjoy the benefits it gives you. So it's a little different to other modalities that we've seen kind of come and go. because it has that sort of longevity element to it that a lot of other modalities don't. So I'm still incredibly bullish the market for Pilates. I still think there's a tremendous amount of capacity that is still untapped. But I do think that if you're not sophisticated and smart about your business and what you're doing in your business, that you might find that you struggle a little bit.
And so, in terms of the sector, growth very strong, continued for the overall sector, but perhaps for those that maybe have become a bit complacent within it or just haven't evolved and really developed as a studio, could be tough times ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that those that often come into this industry come into it with this incredible desire to make an impact and because they've often felt the incredible benefits of Pilates and reformer Pilates and equipment Pilates. And without perhaps a little bit of differentiation, without developing that brand with intention, you might find that you blend in a little bit more. And I think that's one of the biggest risks, frankly, at this moment. Yeah.
Thank you. So, to that point around differences, then, what are you noticing between Pilates growth in boutique studios settings versus some of the kind of the big box gyms or hybrid environments in the US? And I suppose a second question to that is, do you think some of that will come to the UK?
Yeah, so great question. We up until about a year ago, Pilates and especially equipment-based Pilates, like the Reformer, was extremely boutique and small classes. And when I say small, I say, up to about 10 or 12 per class was sort of the maximum with Reformer classes. Some had always done a little more, but that's kind of where I tend to see the average class size go. Now, what we're seeing is an expansion in the capacity of classes. So we're seeing classes with, 12, 15, 20 reformers. And we're seeing this happen also within the gym, the big box gym settings as well. And this is different to what we have ever seen before. What we're seeing also is that a lot of the big box gyms are putting the access to those classes as part of their ongoing monthly membership, which has been also a shift. In the past, it's been an add-on, it's been an extra cost, and now they're using it and putting it within their existing membership, which obviously is, a concern because typically with Pilates, we see more of a premium price point because of that more premium experience, because of the depth and requirement of experience with your teachers and how to teach on those pieces of equipment, as well as those smaller class sizes giving more individualized experience. And so it shifts a lot. And so I think that we see there is a difference there without a doubt in terms of the experience you're having in a boutique studio versus a gym. And I think the key there, as we've just mentioned, is that there is a difference and there's a differentiation between the two. And I think it's very easy to get concerned because of this new sort of way of accessing Pilates, reformer, especially reformer Pilates. But we should be very clear about how different that experience actually is.
So, continue on the theme of, I suppose, changes and differences. In terms of some of the demographic shifts that we're seeing, and there's always great video content of rugby players on, reformer Pilates beds, etc. But in terms of, some of the newer audiences who traditionally, might not have chosen reformer Pilates or Pilates, what are you seeing there in terms of how studios are adapting to new audiences that perhaps are starting to discover reformer Pilates and wanting to try it out?
Pilates is, I mean, it's always for every type of body, right? Joseph Pilates himself was a man. He built this as a strength, mobility, flexibility program from the very beginning. So there are elements of it that are incredibly challenging for anybody, no matter how strong you are. which is why it's kind of always fun to see those rugby players or the, American football players, right, trying to do some of the moves that we're also trying to do. And so, it was designed always to be this sort of accessible for everybody, because the benefits of it are always, so powerful for everyone, no matter who you are and what you're doing. So we see that it's powerful for those who are, young, and even we're seeing increasing numbers of even teen classes coming into the market now, and all the way through to obviously people who have uses it as a tool for rehabilitation post surgery, hip surgery, knee surgery, and so on in the 60s and 70s. Some of the clients that come and are still so active in their 60s and 70s and 80s plus, I mean, even 90s, I know there are plenty of teachers out there teaching people throughout their whole life. So what we're seeing now, I think, is just because of the quantity of studios and options available, we're seeing a little bit of an uptake across more of a broader demographic, which is really, really exciting to see. And, I think from we've known, I mean, I've been in this industry for, 15 years, athletes have always done Pilates. They haven't spoken about it maybe as much as some of the other trainings they do, but they've always done Pilates. And those who take it seriously and include it as part of their entire training regimen will say that this is the most important part of their whole thing, because it does challenge that mobility, the flexibility, the stability, the balance, the coordination part that you can't often get from other kind of types of training. So it's always been there. Now we're just seeing it a whole lot more. And I think that if, it always comes down to, as a studio, who is your audience? And I think it's really, really important that you're clear on who that is, because what we often see and what I hear from many folks is this desire to want to work with a lot of different people. But we do know that when it comes to growing and building a business, that you want to be a bit specific about who you're targeting and who you're talking to with the way that you do things in your studio. And so if your target is that, male rugby player, right, then it's going to be about targeting that audience and making sure that the experience and the language and the way that you're branding your business, your studio business, is targeted towards meeting that need.
Personal observation definitely feels like there's a real opportunity and still a lot of capacity in that. I think you're right. Professional cricketers, tennis players, whoever have done this for 10, 20 years. But the non-professionals, so those that just do their own sport, perhaps still a big opportunity there for that to be driving their longevity in their primary sport, let's say. So it feels like that's still a big opportunity, certainly from what I see in the UK. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go really niche with Pilates, right? So it's often been used as a pre and postpartum workout method, right? Pretty heavily, but we also know that it's exceptionally good for runners. We also know that it's exceptionally good as a cross training tool for anybody who does strength training as well. So we know that we know how powerful it can be, and it's about, as a teacher, as a studio owner, as a business leader, wanting to tap into that very specific niche. And so we're seeing, I've seen programs, when I work with my studio owners, we talk about these different ways to tap into these different markets. And a lot of it comes from, as a teacher, wanting to support that particular type of client with that particular need. And so often it just comes from, what is your interest, and who do you want to really help with Pilates and reformer and equipment Pilates? And so that's really where it's often driven from.
Yeah. Switching it up a little bit now, again, I suppose changes in the industry, starting to see how integration of technology, right? So how reformer fusion classes or boutique experiences are looking to kind of integrate technology. Are you seeing that, and are you observing success with integrating screens, for example, into certain classes?
So interesting. This is such a shift, right? That we are now able to do this in classes and at home. I think there's a huge opportunity here, and I've seen quite a few studios integrate screens somehow into their classes, into their equipment classes. And I think it's also a huge opportunity for the at home market too. And that's, we've already seen that roll out quite successfully. With the class-based screens, I think we're still in the early days of how powerful they can be. I think a lot of I think it really depends on the structure of your business and what it is that the experience that you want to give to your clients. Screens can be very helpful for some clients. They're very visual. It can be helpful for them to see the exercise in a few different ways, as well as hearing it. So when we're trying to teach a class, I don't know if you ever taught a class or a Pilates class, but people retain, like, access the information you're sharing about how to teach in a lot of different ways, right? Some people are visual, they need to see it first. Some people need to hear it. Some people need to be shown. So there's a lot of different ways, and you always want to make sure that your whoever is taking your class is getting the most out of each move, and that they're doing it properly, they're doing it effectively, that it's not just a throwaway exercise. And so for some people, those screens are going to be really powerful. They're going to be great tools for teachers. And that's really exciting, right? We've seen it, we've seen them be used in a few different ways. And we did a few different brands of Reformer products will include it. But one of the most exciting things that I'm seeing now, that I'm kind of curious about, and I think this is sort of interesting for anybody who is teaching and loves to teach, and folks who are perhaps in sort of in a more one-on-one type of a scenario or rehabilitation, is that we're seeing reformers built now with sensors in them that gives you immediate feedback as to whether you are putting more or less pressure on one side of the body or the other. So if you're pushing out from the reformer, right, with your feet on the foot bar, if you're pushing out more through the right foot versus the left foot, you can get that feedback immediately. And that is really helpful and powerful information for the teacher, because ultimately when we're teaching a class, yes, it's about getting good workout, but a good workout means that you're teaching the body in a balanced state, that you are helping folks to overcome certain weaknesses that they already have. A lot of times we are completely subconsciously favoring one side of the body or another for all sorts of reasons that we are not aware of at all. And so when you have that feedback from the teacher, from which the teacher gets from the reformer, it just makes that workout so much more effective. And this is something that I am actually really excited about, almost more excited than the screens part, because I think it's gives you as a teacher just more tools to be able to help your clients more with getting the best workout and getting the best movement practice out of whatever sessions it is that you're giving. So that's the part that I'm super excited about. I think the wearables and the tech is here to stay. I think we all love data. We all love to know, right, how we slept last night, how many hours did we sleep, how many steps have we taken, and all of the things. I don't see that going away at all. And it's about how we can then use that, in our business as a teacher to be able to deliver a more effective experience.
Absolutely. 8 hours 3 last night I got.
That's right.
This month. So,
nice one. Nice one.
but it's really interesting to go from that subjective to very objective measurement of people doing, Pilates. That's, I take your point there. It's a pretty significant shift and a real value of technology, of something that's really useful versus just something that you could do. So, that's significant. And kind of building on that point you mentioned, and we hear it frequently in all the surveys and conversations that we have, importance of the instructor is critical. And that contributes very much to this sense that, boutique fitness isn't just about exercise, it's culture, it's community, it's identity. Again, I always want to get the kind of what you see in the US perspective, because we don't get to see that. But again, how are US studios kind of leveraging that sense of culture, community, and identity? How do you see them kind of leveraging that effectively?
Well, I think every studio has its community. And I think from the most of the studio owners that I speak to, one of the sort of unintended consequences of opening a boutique fitness studio is this incredible community that it also creates. And these friendships that are born out of this shared experience of movement, which can be so incredibly powerful. And I think ultimately is one of the, drivers of how powerful the boutique experience can be, and for retention of your clients overall. And so I think that building that sense of community and developing that culture in the studio is just absolutely critical. For those studios that don't do this, you see it. You see them turning into studios that have people coming in and walking straight back out again, or they'll come in and they'll do the discounted intro and then they won't stay. And, when there isn't a sense of belonging, when there isn't a sense of familiarity, when there isn't an intentional creation of shared values, and sharing of those values, then, it feels like an empty experience. And I think when people come to boutique fitness, they're looking for more than an empty experience. They're looking for more than that. They can go to a big box gym. They can do a YouTube workout for free at home. There's a lot of other options if you're not looking for other people's energy around you, right? But most people, when they come to a boutique class, and it's a boutique class in the sense that it's a smaller space and a smaller community, and you're seeing familiar faces, it's a different experience. And most people are looking for that, I think, in this day and age, especially. So it's not something that anyone is ignoring. If you're savvy about growth, you're very focused on this, for sure.
So that's a key ingredient. And I suppose to dig into one of the topics there you mentioned, which is around retention, and I suppose this is getting into what you do a lot of, right? So from your work with hundreds of studios, what are the most effective ways Pilates studios are attracting and retaining clients right now?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking about getting new clients in and retaining clients, there's a huge toolbox available to you. And I think that one of the things that we often get wrong, or what a lot of folks get wrong, is that they assume that it's just about social media, and it's not at all. Social media is not the tool that you're going to use to get and keep clients at all. There are a lot of other tools that you're going to use in concert with social media, but we should not be relying on that. But it does seem, for some reason, just to take up a huge amount of space in our thinking about marketing and getting clients in the door. And I think, when it comes to growth and client and then lead generation and conversion and retention, which is sort of the flow that we see, we want, I should say, we want to make sure that we're tapping into all the different channels and platforms and opportunities for growth and visibility and awareness at the top of the funnel. And we want to make sure that we have our processes in place for pulling people into the studio, and for ensuring that they are actively engaging with the classes, that they are getting what they want out of those classes, and then that they are guided forward into that next sell beyond that sort of first few visits. And so typically it's not just about getting new clients. There's a strategy there, right? There should be a strategy there. If there's not a strategy there, then you are risking your business, because again, the industry is growing at a rate which doesn't really allow for not having strategic approaches in the business, for not having processes that are designed for lead generation and retention. So we want to make sure that we have got those structures and the strategies in place throughout that customer journey that is designed to meet our clients where they are, that is guiding them forward. And there's a lot of very specific things that you can do, ways that you're touch points you're creating and ways that you're connecting with your clients to make sure that once they find you, that they're excited about coming in, that once they come in, they're having a fantastic experience, that they could then come back for that next class or session, they come back for that next class or session, and then so on, and they move into that sort of more of a longer term commitment membership or package. And what we often find, especially amongst newer studios, is that we don't have that structure and strategy in place yet. And that's a huge opportunity if you don't, because that tells me that there is, there are things that we can do to really sort of create a stronger, more robust business as a whole. And if those things are in place, then oftentimes there are some gaps that need to be perhaps refined or upgraded or improved that can help to really make sure that we aren't losing clients when we don't need to, or that we are attracting the right people in the door in the first place. And so those tools look like a lot of things that sort of need to interlink together. And I always say it's kind of a bit of a puzzle, right? And, if those puzzle pieces are just all scattered around the floor, it's really hard. But like, you want to kind of put the pieces together. They should fit together really, really well. And, we need to have all the pieces fitting together well, not just a couple. And so if you've got some gaps in there, you don't have a full and complete picture, you're going to be losing clients along the way.
Component within that, Seran, as well, is presumably like pricing and value perception. So you make a really good point there in terms of the sequences and opportunities to delight. But I'd love to get your view in terms of kind of pricing and value perception, which is obviously huge for long-term sustainability. any trends in pricing or packaging that you're noticing?
There's nothing shifted enormously in the industry that I've seen over here in the US. We went, just to give you kind of a bit of a perspective that I look at, because obviously I've been doing this a long time. So in the beginning days of the boutique fitness boom, which started out, around 2010, I would say, the biggest difference in why boutique fitness, I think one of the reasons why boutique fitness became so popular was because it sort of turned the tradition on its head of only being able to access fitness through a year-long contract at a big box gym, right? And it said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. It said we're going to do packages of 10 classes or 5 classes or drop-in classes. So we're not asking you for a big commitment. And initially, in those days back then, that's how most boutique studios began. And then what we saw was that they decided that actually a lot of folks were looking for a membership because they actually quite enjoyed that sort of accountability of having a membership of some sort at a boutique fitness. And so folks added the membership element to it. And the membership element looked a little different to the big box gym memberships, right? Initially, there was a lot of unlimited type membership offerings, but we do not see that as much in the Pilates space, mostly because the classes are limited, and that creates a bit of an issue for you as a studio owner when you cannot deliver on a membership because all of your classes are full, which is what we've seen. So we see a lot of membership options with limited numbers. So that's like an 8 times a month membership, 12 times a month membership, and so on. And less so, we're seeing the unlimited memberships in most small boutique studios. Yes, we see it sometimes in the franchises, but less so in a sort of owner operated boutique studio. So that still all exists. And, I think that when it comes to pricing, I think it's really, really important that I make this point, which is that there is not a pricing model that is better than another. There is a pricing structure that is going to be best for the way that you deliver what you do in your studio based on the capacity, based on your goals, based on your growth, based on your clients and consumer behavior. And so it's really important that you build out a pricing model that meets all of those needs and that works for you and that is profitable. So there's not one way, or there's not one way that's now better than another way, but there is probably a right way for every studio owner.
You touched on a moment ago, we were talking about the various different the toolbox that's available to drive memberships and retention, and perhaps the kind of over focus on social media. But I did want to just get your perspective on that for a moment in terms of, storytelling. And it feels like that is still a big focus of attention in fitness marketing. Are there any brands that you see, messaging differently to stand out? And again, anything that, we could learn in the UK, because it feels like US is pretty competent at this.
Yeah, no, social media is important. It's a part of your toolkit, has to be. And I think that we have to continue to use it as sophisticated of a way as possible, but without it becoming our full-time job, right? Which as a studio owner, that is often the challenge. So where this really comes from and the root of this is really comes down to your brand messaging. And I think that when most people are thinking about social media, they're thinking about something they have to post, or they're often trying to follow some trend or use some sort of trending audio and trying to do something smart there. And often we skip over sort of the core messaging that you need folks in your community, because as a local business owner, you have a community of people around you that are waiting to hear from you, right? Are waiting to see you pop up on their feed. We want to make sure that when we're showing up for them, that they see content that resonates with them, right? And that is often where the storytelling can be so incredibly powerful. So we have to be leaning into the most sophisticated way of reaching people with our core messaging, and ensuring that what we're putting out, that the content that we're putting out there is highly relevant for our target audience, for the people that we most want to work with in our studio. And so the temptation might be to put together a fun reel or a TikTok or whatever that is got that great fun audio and the beat drops and you change or whatever it is, right? That you're wanting to do that, but it doesn't always land with the clientele that you're looking to bring into your studio. And so again, the way that I work with my studio owners is that we are strategic about our messaging. We're thoughtful about what that looks like and what it is that we want people to know about our business, first of all. And then we're looking at all of the different tactics that we can use to share and showcase the core messaging for our business. And this, again, is how you differentiate yourself from every other studio on the street. Because if you're just copying what everyone else is doing online or what you're seeing on social media, you are just going to blend in and you're going to sound like everyone else. And I think that is, again, a real risk for your business and business growth. So, we see a lot of studio owners really enjoying great results from a lot of more personalized and personal posts and content pieces. And again, that just comes back to this sort of desire of wanting to connect with people in your local community, right? That you're not building an influencer brand that is global, you're actually building a community within your community of people who are coming into your studio. And so if you aren't showing your face, if you aren't showing who you are and what you're all about, then, you run the risk of being overlooked. And I think it's really important that as the business owner and as the founder of someone in a local business, that people know who you are and people know what you're about and what you care about, because that's ultimately what's going to drive your brand and the experience that they're going to get in your studio.
Yeah, it very much builds on some of the themes you've touched on already in terms of differentiation and connection and community. It's and those are the things to bring out in social media and otherwise, versus fitting with the latest trend and perhaps getting a bit of a momentary dopamine hit. So yeah, take that on board. Thank you. We touched on this before, and I already kind of shared. I remember holding my Whoop up to the screen a moment ago, but when we were talking about wearable tech and personalized experiences, and specifically like the new technology you mentioned that would be able to measure on reformer beds, do you see that in? I mean, I'll be honest, you're the first person that's told me about that, so that's new to me. How is it, that kind of personalized experience, showing up in Pilates? And do you see that as something that will continue and influence people in terms of how they're going to engage with reformer classes?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all, like we already mentioned, we're all already measuring a lot of
Yeah.
movement practices, right? And so I think that, when it comes to some of the existing wearable tech, it's going to be, and it's going to show up in that way a lot, and make people feel good about what they've done and that they've come to a class, and that's great. I think that, beyond that, I'm not sure how much more we can do with the wearable tech when it comes to Pilates. I'll never forget when I was teaching in New York a long time ago. It was when the Apple Watch first kind of was doing fitness stuff. I had a client that came in and was incredibly frustrated because, they were 30 minutes into their reformer Pilates class and they had only burned however many calories it was, and it wasn't enough. And, she was comparing it to her, Soul Cycle class that she was doing, and it was way more, And so I think that we're more educated now than we were then about how impactful reformer Pilates can be from even just a calorie burn perspective versus a spin class, and how it's a different modality and it does different things for the body, and both have benefits. So I think the consumer is ultimately incredibly more informed than ever before. And I think because of that, they're also more informed about, we've mentioned like how well they've slept and perhaps how well they're recovering and so on. And I think Pilates sits in a place in movement which sort of intersects both the strength component plus the recovery component. And so I think that it makes it, again, just all the more compelling for anyone who is aware of their, is wanting to improve their wellness and well-being and health. And I think that people will continue to see the benefits of Pilates and what it does. And the tech may or may not count it in quite the same way as it might count a spin class. But, I think that for those consumers today versus, 5-10 years ago, we're more informed about what our bodies need, right? And it isn't necessarily just more.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how comfortable you are with predictions, but I'd love to get your view of what you think will be the biggest trend or shift in reformer Pilates specifically over the next 12 to 24 months that maybe UK studio owners should prepare for? So any predictions over the next year or two?
So interesting. I think the US and the UK markets are a little bit different. I think the US market we're still seeing a tremendous amount of private equity money flow into the industry. I think that we're still seeing a lot of variety of brands in Pilates come into the market. And I think that each of those brands are targeting a different variation of Pilates, right? And what it does. And I think that we're going to continue to see that. And I think that's great because again, one of the keys to success is that you are differentiating yourself from others and that you are targeting a specific audience with what you do, right? So I think that US is a little bit more mature of a market in that sense because you have had that the growth and that those larger names coming into the industry. And so I think, I do think that this is the year where those studios who are not savvy and sophisticated with their efforts around business will struggle. I don't think it's happening yet, but I do think that, towards the end of the year and the beginning of next year, we might find that starts to happen. So I'm looking for it, and that is my sort of concern. I'm hoping it's not going to happen, but that is my concern. I think in the UK, they're a little earlier, I think, in the life cycle in a lot of ways. So what I'm seeing in the UK is a lot of studios opening on that are owner operated. It is that really nice, 5 to 10 reformer studios, which I think is a really nice sweet spot in a local community, in a town or a city where you can build that great, strong community where there is an audience of people who really want to include wellness and movement in their lifestyle, and there isn't a tremendous amount of competition for doable options for this sort of large quantity of people, right? And I think that we're seeing a large proportion of the population being able to access Pilates in a very nice way across different age groups, different demographics, and so on, which is fantastic. And so I think there's a huge opportunity in the UK. Again, I think around the world, just because of just how much interest there is in this industry and the amount of money flowing into it, right? Where I think that the Pilates and yoga studios market globally was valued at $175 billion or something like that, right? It's huge numbers, and we're seeing more people come into this market in ways that are sort of unexpected as well. So I do think that we are going to we are going to see that the market expands in a lot of different ways. I think the consumer is going to be more informed than they ever have been about not just how many hours they slept or how many hours of movement they've done each day, but they're just going to be more informed about what they need for themselves. And so I think that the UK has a lot of opportunity for growth. And again, I think that the key is going to be that you're building your business in a really smart, sophisticated, and sustainable way. And you're thinking about all of the different pieces of the puzzle, right, that goes into making your business really, really robust for the long term.
Yeah. You mentioned accessible or accessibility there, as you were talking about the US market. As it's more developed, advanced, it's in a cycle ahead of the UK. Would you say that US studios are kind of making reformer more accessible and more inclusive?
Well, in what way? How do you mean?
Well, I think that today in the UK there's a perception of the classic Pink Pilates princess, let's say, which is, I don't know if that's kind of old hat now, but that's generally the core group. And perhaps at both the kind of price points and the level of athleticism required to go into a class, it can perhaps be intimidating. I just wonder, is that the case in the US, or do you see opportunities for it to be more accessible and more inclusive?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that I get to work with studios that are all shapes and sizes, honestly. And I work with folks who are, rehabilitating, our 70-year-olds post knee injury and hip replacements, right? I work with a lot of studios that have, the full equipment and not just reformer. And I work with a lot of reformer only studios as well. So I see all of it. So from my perspective, I may not be the best person to ask because I do see all of that. And, you know, within that, I see folks who are making it more accessible to more people in their community in a lot of different ways, as well as opening up sort of, you know, specific options for beginners or for more advanced or for different segments of their own sort of population. So, you know, I wouldn't say that there is sort of like this united effort to make it more accessible, right? Because, you know, that doesn't really exist. But I would say that on a sort of an individual level, which is how most of these, you know, independently operated studios operate, they are looking at their audience and looking at the people who come in, and they are building this community, and they want to serve as many of those people as possible. And so where it makes sense, I am seeing that for sure.
Man, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I've just got one last question. It's a bit more of a personal one, but I always ask it at the end of every podcast, which is, what has given you unbridled joy in the past week or so?
Okay. So I just started playing Mahjong, which is like this game with tiles. It's become incredibly
I know
popular
it.
here. Do you know it? Okay.
I know. I
So
played it. I played it as a kid. Believe it or not, I had
did
an auntie that
you?
insisted on teaching me how to windy knitting, or well, not windy knitting. What is it called? I've got a windy. I can't remember all the hands, but it's an amazing game.
It's very fun. So it's just taking off here massively. And I played yesterday and I won twice. And I was made me very happy because actually that was the first time I had won in a long time. So that was fun. Super fun.
Hats off. Hats off. Great. Well, I
Not
love
Pilates
the Marsha.
related at all, but still.
No, but good. Very mindful. It's a good thing because you just get consumed by that. So it's a really a really nice thing to do. Saran, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you again for spending your time with us. And yeah, all the very best for your continued success with Spring 3, etc. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.